Think about your phone for a second. In fact, maybe you're even watching this video on your phone. And how often do you get that little notification telling you there's a new software update? And sometimes that update is just doing some minor things, fixing some bugs or vulnerabilities. Other times it might be adding some new features that make our life easier. And then every few years or so, we realize, gosh, my phone has gotten so old that there are these new models that have all these new features that would be really helpful to have. Maybe it's time that I upgrade my phone. Well, your estate plan is no different. From the day you take it home, it starts becoming outdated, day by day by day. And although the latest release of a new iPhone might be more exciting to some, I would argue keeping your estate plan up to date is more important to you and your family in the long run. So today I'm going to talk about the 5 most common reasons that estate plans need to be updated or upgraded. The first reason your plan may need to be updated or upgraded is due to major life events, whether that's things like a divorce or a marriage or having more children. I would say especially with a new marriage, and if it's a second or third marriage, even more critical to have your plan reviewed and updated. There's so many marital law issues that can come into play, or juggling different things between blended families, that it's really important to think about how these life events impact your plan. The second reason your plan may need to be updated or upgraded is major life events for your loved ones, whether that's things like births, deaths, marriages, divorces, major health changes. All of this can impact your plan. Maybe you had somebody pass away in your family and they were named as a beneficiary or a helper in your plan. Or maybe your children were younger when you did your planning and now they're grown and you're ready to start naming them as your helpers. We also find that as our clients start having grandchildren, they start getting more serious about having things like bloodline protection in their planning. We also have other clients that are now faced with being a caregiver for an aging parent. And while it's not something that we want to think about, what happens if you pass away before your parent? Who's going to continue that caregiving and make sure that they're provided for? The third reason your plan may need updating or upgrading is due to minor life events. And these are the ones that I actually think are more dangerous because they kind of fly under the radar, but over time they can add up and they can really become detrimental to the planning. And there's a lot of them out there, so I'm just going to give a couple quick examples. Some ones that we see frequently are things like changing jobs or retiring, or maybe you change banks or financial advisors. And as part of any of those processes, you'll often do some new beneficiary designations. But if those designations aren't set up to work with this rest of the estate plan, the planning can start to unravel. I've also seen situations where people start to grow apart from friends or family members that they named in their plan. Maybe you had named a close family friend to be a guardian, but since they've moved to another state and now that doesn't make sense anymore. So we need to just review the plan periodically and say, hey, does this plan still work and does it make sense? The fourth reason your plan may need to be updated or upgraded is due to changes in the real world. I know we all want to think about the law as being black and white, but unfortunately that's not the case, especially when it comes to something like estate planning, where we're interacting with healthcare providers and financial institutions and just other family members. It's not always black and white. So a lot of what we do in our office is we're regularly looking at what is happening out in the real world. What are our clients and their family members likely to encounter when they take this document to the bank or to a healthcare provider? And to give you one example, one of the trends we've seen is for banks and financial institutions, they've gotten really hard to work with over the last few years. They're always trying to protect their liability, and as a result, they've gotten more and more restrictive about working with things like power of attorney or trust documents. And you'd think it would be enough to have some document that says, hey, my person can step in my shoes and do anything that I can do, but that's really not the case. They don't like those provisions. They like to see everything listed out in the document. My agent can do X, my agent can do Y, and so forth. So as a result, we're regularly reviewing and updating these provisions based on what we're seeing out in the real world. And so that brings me to the fifth reason why your plan may need to be updated or upgraded: changes in the law and changes in best practices. Now, sometimes changes in the law are pretty obvious, like we've had some major tax law changes over the years, or a few years ago, North Carolina made some updates to the power of attorney laws that we talked about quite a bit. But the best practices is the one that sort of flies under the radar. We're regularly looking at what are the best practices, and we're constantly tweaking and adapting things or developing new tools. We're looking at, how can we help these families be better prepared for the issues that life might throw their way? So if all of this sounds like a lot, it kind of is, but it's not something that you need to worry about. That's what we're here for. So if it's been a few years since you set up your will or trust, give our office a call to discuss whether it might be time for an update.